Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, I want to welcome our guest, Jason McKnight. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you? Thank you for having me on the show.
I appreciate it, man. Like, here's the thing. I've been in the cannabis space so freaking long. When I tell people, like, oh, I'm in the cannabis space, I'm sort of adjacent to the cannabis space at this point now in my
Mhm.
life. But I used to be the president of the Cannabis Action Network, and I tell people, like, I held a rally. I'm from Philly. I live in LA now, but I
Okay.
held a rally back in 1993 at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and we're like, huh? What are you talking about? I said, yeah, I had my keynote speaker at the rally was this woman named Elvie Masika, who was one of the first people to get federally prescribed cannabis under the NIDA program. Like, well, what do you mean? I thought it's a Schedule One drug. I'm like, yeah, but did you know that the government actually had a program where they grow cannabis, they actually provide cannabis and rolled cigarettes with a USDA label on it, and it was under a federal program. So it's been so long, but I'm so grateful to kind of see the industry and people that have, we've been in the black market, gray. I'll speak about myself. Gray market, black market, all those kind of things, because you have to navigate, those sort of, tight corners, I would say, in order to pursue what we're actually passionate about. So I wanted to find out from you, how did you even get into the business of cannabis, and were you a consumer before, or how did you even get attracted to cannabis in the first place?
First of all, kudos to you. 93,
Yeah, I'm
triple,
old.
triple OG. No, that's amazing though, because that was a time period in my life when things were starting to change, in the direction that people were trying to really take cannabis, right? So back to your question. I started around 1996. That's when I was introduced. Not that I was introduced to cannabis, but from a business standpoint. Um, I grew up around it. My father had been a entrepreneur during his heyday, and he was the one that introduced me and my family to cannabis. And I'm born in the '70s, so this was early '80s, and that was something that was normal and regular at my house during that time. But yeah, around 1996, at the time I was living in Northern California, and like you were on the East Coast, so I was on the West Coast, and I was in the Emerald Triangle. So I was in a place where cannabis was what you see today with the Prop 215 and then the legalization. That was the place where you were seeing the type of thing that you were trying to create, in Philadelphia, by standing up at town hall and forcing people to hear what you were trying to preach or what you were looking for. That was happening, but it was different. We were the farmers. We, in my area where I grew up, Lake County, Lakeport is the city that I grew up in. Originally from Los Angeles, but I ended up there in 1988, and I think I was 12 years old at the time. So it was a shock. I came from the city, and then all of a sudden I'm out here where people are growing trees, and literally, right? And that was it, man. So I was introduced to it at a young age. I was 18 years old. For me, it was simply a way of life. It was a opportunity for me to earn some money, and it just kept going.
So you grew up in LA. Is it what caused the move to the Emerald Triangle up north?
Man, a lot of it was economics. At that time in LA, this was the '80s, and my family had a hard time, due to drugs, the epidemic that was happening. We had a lot of displacement, a lot of people going through hard times in our community, and my particular situation was my mom was trying to get away from it. and it led us up north. Crazy story, but I got to where we settled when I was 12, and I didn't leave until I was 18. So it wasn't supposed to be permanent, but that's what happened. And I'm telling you, it was like night and day, coming from Los Angeles and then coming from this environment, and then going to the woods. That's the best way to explain it.
Oh no, I hear you. I've been there. So I spent some time in Nevada City, and then I was in Santa Rosa, like all
Oh
that,
yeah,
all those areas. So I spent some time. I've been to some of those farms where you're really in the woods. I remember I was driving one time up to um, Nevada City, and the road was I flooded, and there was only one lane, and then you had to walk through mud. Like you're coming from you're a city boy. You're coming from the city, and you
yeah.
now you're in the woods.
I can tell you some stories about them back roads.
I want to
That's
hear all about them. But so definitely tell me about that. But I wanted to kind of get the family dynamic so I understand. So
yeah.
were your parents together? Divorced?
They
You have
were.
siblings?
But I do. I have three other siblings.
Wow.
My parents my parents were married, and you know they divorced around 86, 87 was when they went through a breakup, and they separated. I wouldn't say they divorced, they separated at that time. But my dad at that point in time, he had developed um, some bad habits, and it really it wasn't just him. It was pretty much most of the male figures in my family had got themselves into a problem using drugs, and at that time it was cocaine, um, and that led to freebasing the cocaine. These are things that I visually remember as a child seeing happening in front of us,
Right.
and it just got to a point where it was chaos. That was the real reason why we ended up moving away from LA, because the family had fallen apart. My mom was she was actually dealing with legal troubles of her own, um, that forced us to have to kind of run at the time, and in doing so, it was a separation. I had two older siblings who were my half siblings, my brother and sister, but we had different fathers, and we separated from them. So it was just me and my younger brother at the time, and that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to endure and deal with as a child. Back then, I think we all were we were we grew up faster. That's the best way to put it. I feel like I was grown by the time I was 13. I was a grown man,
Yeah.
in the sense of learning how to survive, learning how to fend for myself, and being in that environment, in the 80s here in LA. It's well documented how bad it was. We came from, at the time we came from nothing. My family, poverty and low income, government assistance, those things were very real, and that was reality, for us. So, if anything, my mom was doing the best she could for two reasons. She was trying to not find herself incarcerated and get us out of the situation, knowing that if she was to be separated, we'd become, wards of the court. Or so we were really running from problems, and we ran into, the woods. That's the best way to put it.
It's interesting. I completely understand what the economic situation, and what you have to go through, and you have to do what you have to do. And I understand the 80s. I also grew up in the 80s. I'm 52, so I grew
Yeah,
up. I was born 72, I guess. I'll be
yeah,
53. So I went through that whole era as well. But you know, going from LA and then going up into the woods, as you said, even if you had, and I was going to ask you, like, sort of, what were your interests as a kid? Were you artistic? Were you into sports? Because your environment may not even have allowed you to express, the type of interest that you really had internally because you had to move and shift and,
Yeah.
like you said, fend for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, as a child, I think I went to a different school every year from kindergarten to fifth grade.
Oh, wow.
So that was 6 years of different schools or leaving a school halfway in. So I had to learn to adapt all the time. But my interest, I was athletic, um, and that was my saving grace in a lot of ways because that allowed me to enter doors that I would not have been allowed into otherwise.
Got it.
So moving from LA to the woods, Lake County, Lakeport, California, that sports that the ability to play sports at a high level, which I was blessed with talent. Not saying I was great or anything like that, but I was good for that time and that place, right?
Yeah.
And it allowed me to almost find a home amongst that community. Because if you know anything about small town America, when you're part of them, it means a lot more, right? So finding a home there and having the ability to play sports allowed me to kind of blend in, even though my circumstances at home weren't very good. I was still the best guy on the football team. I was the best kid playing basketball. And being that led me to, you know, the one thing about being up there is, and the best way to put it is, there's nowhere to hide. Even though you're in the woods, you think you have somewhere to hide. But when it comes to just interacting with people, there's nowhere to hide. So, economic status, being the richest kid in town or the poorest kid in town, the one thing is we're still in town. So,
It doesn't matter.
and being the best athlete in that town, that was my defense mechanism. That was my survival. Being able to go on these trips with other people's parents. My mom wasn't able to go. You know, she had to work two jobs. And it was just her. So a lot of the time, it was me and my little brother hitching rides or being part of this community, and that was what allowed me to survive and get to where I'm at today. Learning how to adapt and be a chameleon.
Yeah.
That's the best way I put it.
Yeah,
I'm a chameleon.
and you're resilient. It builds a sense of resilience because, one thing is being a latchkey kid like myself. And for those of you that know what that is, it's like, we come home from school ourselves. We take the
Yeah.
bus, parents
Yep.
are at work. We
Yep.
make some food. We go out and play. And, when the lights come on, it's the time to go home for dinner kind of
Yep.
thing. Yeah. What do you mean? Your parents don't drive, to your whatever club or your game? Like, no, man, my parents are working. I did
Yeah.
all that stuff myself.
We,
But in addition to that, you also have a dynamic where you have some turmoil. You have to be resilient to be able to not only fend for yourself, but also, take a leadership role in your life. As you were saying, you sort of took away some of the childhood from you because you have to learn how to be an adult really quick. I mean, there are definitely pros and cons to that. When you got back to LA, and I definitely want to hear a couple of backwoods stories too. But when you got back, I'm assuming you
yeah,
at some
man.
point got back
I
to
made it
LA,
back.
right?
That's how I came back to the land. Yeah, it was that's sports led me back to LA. I
Okay.
I was able to play football at the college level. That's what ended up getting me back over here. Um, and honestly, being from there, I brought the Greenwich with me. Right, I had to bring it because that was my survival.
Yeah.
That was my way of making sure I could pay the rent, making sure I had food. I became accustomed to it at an early age, and that was it. So when I got down here back to LA, I was like, "Hey guys, look what I brought with me. Not only can I can throw the rock around, but look what else I got." And that was it. Came back to LA with 1999.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, that's
so
that's that's your hustle. You got to do what you got to do at that
that's
point.
it.
And it's nice to have some trees from up north. Before we started doing all the indoor hydro stuff, all the stuff
No,
grew
there
up
was no
north.
such thing, really. I
Exactly.
mean, we had it, but it was like, oh, my uncle has two lights in his in his closet. It
That's what I
wasn't
had. I had a light in my closet. I'm like, all right, I'm growing
the best I
something.
could do.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but definitely that was very cool. That was the very cool aspect of being the guy that's
Mhm.
from LA, but now I'm from Northern California. So I blended.
Yeah.
It was like I'm back home, but guess what? I'm accepted up here as well. And made it very easy and special for me to be able to move through the cannabis world.
Yeah, 100%. Because you have both of those, and it's such a different dynamic being up there. You're talking to. I remember this guy, Wade Laughter. I'll never forget it. He said he brought the Harlequin, chemovar from uh, I think it was from Vietnam, wherever war he was in. He said, "I brought the original seeds, I crossed them, and this is the original." But all you have to communicate to the people there differently than it is in LA. The beards and they're farmers. They're really farmers and really take that passion. It's a different
It's
dynamic.
just a whole different world in the sense of how they view the plant and
Yeah.
how they view what we're doing with it. Um, no, and that's what, being a kid getting there, that was the biggest thing. When I got there at 12 years old, I was like, dude, who are these dudes? You know what I mean? Like it was a whole different world.
Yeah.
I was around the complete, it was like polar opposite of what I was used to being as a child. And but that's what made me me, man. Being able to be in that room and then being accepted by that core of group of people as well as the people from LA was what made it easier for me.
I don't know if you've actually thought about it in this way, but when you were playing football and you were uh, contributing a supplement of herbal supplement to your teammates and everything else there, did you think for a while that maybe the cannabis is also helping me with my aches and pains? Like, besides just consuming, to get high or whatever to escape, did you think about it having any positive effects on
You know,
body? Hmm.
to be honest with you, I did, but it wasn't the aches and pains. It was the mental stress that I was dealing with. It wasn't about, at that point I'd been bruised up, but I was still young. And so the pain issue wasn't physical. It was all here.
Yeah.
It was all, the pressure of being successful and trying to build my way and get myself out of that situation. Um, it makes it a big difference when I was able to really understand, like, listen, this is my medicine. This is how I get to sit down for a few minutes of time and kind of let it all go. And that was my experience with cannabis. I wasn't an abusive user of it. To be honest with you, I was negative. Drugs, I hated drugs.
Yeah.
I was so anti-drug, um, because of what it did to my family. It was like, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan say no. Um, Even though I was in a square, but I never looked at cannabis that way. None of us did. It was the other stuff. But I was, for a good moment there, I was determined not to get hooked on anything, whether it was cannabis, Coca-Cola, um, you name it, because I was so desperately wanting to change the trajectory of my family.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you've seen it firsthand. You've seen what that can do, but you're also not experiencing with cannabis the same thing. However, there is a tipping point where you start depending on a substance, regardless of what it is, to be
yeah,
able to numb or be able to, relax and get away. You don't want the substance to control you. You want to control the substance and use it when you want to.
and I think that's what I enjoyed about cannabis. It was never overbearing.
Yeah.
It was nothing that I could just be like cold turkey. I'm not doing it for 2 or 3 weeks. If whatever it was, I didn't do it during the season. It was really just off season. And obviously that changed as I got older and we graduated to the next level. But in the beginning, that's how I was utilizing it.
So when you were going to school and you were playing football and you're dabbling in cannabis, did you have a desire like this is what I want to do with my life? Like I have I want to be a professional athlete, or maybe I didn't see that for myself at this level because I started seeing it, or I want to be an engineer. Did you have any thoughts and desires and goals at that
It,
point?
no, to be honest, and that's full transparency. No, I wanted to find a path that was more like what I thought was the American dream, to become a, a doctor, a lawyer, even a teacher at one point. I used to look at teachers and be like, man, that's the best job I know. Like to me, a teacher, when I was so poor, and that a teacher was like, I would die to be able to generate that type of money and live like in my eyes at that time. That's how I viewed it as a young man.
Yeah.
And I was into sports, so I was like, man, I'll just be a PE teacher. I could do so many different things, but cannabis was not on the radar. That came a little bit later on down the line.
So when you started in your trajectory of life, were there like uh, I'm getting this job, or did you actually at some point make a conscious decision that regardless, because we saw Prop 215, SB 420, we saw that happen,
Yeah.
years and years ago. For many people, that was like, holy shit, that's my inspiration. I'm going to find a way how to do that. Or, all right, that's nice. I can buy my weed and it's legal. I can get a medical card and let me do something completely different. Did you ever put the two together at that
Yeah.
point?
So it was 2003. So 2003 was the time that I made that mental uh, transaction and into believing like, man, there's more here than just selling this blue dime bag,
Yeah.
$20 for a gram, whatever it was. I saw what was happening. I was in Lake County. That was where the first script ever issued for Prop 215 was issued right there in Upper Lake. Um, Eddie Lepp. I don't know if you know that name,
Oh,
but
I know Eddie Lepp. Yeah. I knew Eddie Lepp really well.
okay.
Yeah.
So he was a neighbor of ours right down the street off Highway 20.
Yeah.
So when he put the 10,000 plants and planted that whole field, that was something I drove past every day as a kid.
Yeah.
So 2003, I'd graduated. Uh, I was determined to make it, but I was still lost at two. I was, 21, 22 years old or whatever it was at the time. And I was not sure where to go. And you know, I found myself in real estate of all things.
Okay.
And I was capable and able to get a job with a company, General Motors. So at the time, they just created their first real estate division where they were going to do lending and stuff like that. So this was like 2003, 2004. Uh, but at that time, I got into that thinking this was the future, but I still had my little grow at my house. At that point, I'd put in 4 lights in a bedroom, in the back bedroom, and that was when OG Kush was the biggest thing on earth, and we were getting $7,200 a pound for it. So I was never going to turn those lights off, no matter what job I took. It was more like, hey, I'm going to get up, go to work at 8 in the morning, and when I get home at 5, my lights will turn on about 6, and I will work in my room until 9 or 10 o'clock at night, maybe even midnight, and then I'll go to sleep and do it again the next day. And that was I was okay with that. But
It's so funny to me that, the entrepreneurial journey, if you listen to a lot of the quote unquote coaches or inspirational, motivational people like Gary Vaynerchuk and Tony Robbins, they talk about this thing. If you want to be an entrepreneur, even Arnold Schwarzenegger even talks about it. Even if you work your day job, whatever you have to do, and at night there's 24 hours in a day, you then do what you're really passionate about. So you kind of follow that entrepreneurial
yeah,
trajectory.
and that's what I had to do. I knew, at that time, 2003, 2004, you weren't allowed to just openly sell weed, right? You weren't able to be the guy that, even if you thought that was what your job was, you still couldn't publicly allow that to be known as that which what you were doing.
Yeah.
So it was perfect. I went and got my day job, and at nighttime I was Batman selling weed.
Oh yeah, I can definitely relate to that. When I moved to LA, I met also through real estate. I used to be a commercial real estate broker years
Okay.
ago. And then
Okay.
I met these guys who wanted to open up a dispensary. And I helped them out and they offered me a partnership. We had a dispensary called Kush Kingdom in Orange County. So we ended up having four of them, those shops. We
Yeah.
exclusive home of Corrupt Kush and Method Man's Black Hat OG. But
Yeah.
because you just mentioned OG Kush, I remember this day we didn't test. We didn't know. Like,
No, none of that was
smile. All right, OG Kush. That's a big seller, man. We've slapped that label right on there. I got
running.
OG Kush. That's it. It was a different experience then. How do you think that? And I want to get into Green Label and all the things you're doing now, but I'm just curious how do you think the legal market now, which is it also went through different iterations. How do you think uh, did you predict and think that the legal market would be the way it is now? And how has it changed the entire dynamic of what you used to do back in the day, even?
Well, that was when it was around 2006 when I was like, they're going to do something here, and this whole thing's going to change. We were starting to see more dispensaries pop up. I don't know what year you had your Kush Kingdom.
2010.
Okay, so 2006 is when I was like, I was starting to get a feel for what was happening. 2005, there was what we called at the time, it was like New Amsterdam out here in the valley. We had Reseda Boulevard. There was shops just popping up everywhere in Reseda.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, this is crazy. This is the future. If they're allowing these people to open these stores and no one's doing anything about it, it's just a matter of time. And that's that was the point in which I was all in. I was like, there's going to be a future. Why not me? Why not me be one of the first people to get out here and create some sort of cannabis business? We didn't think about branding. None of that stuff was even it's what you said. What's the coolest strain name? That's what it is today because it's all turkey bag boys. That's all we have is turkey bags, you right?
That's it, right?
Uh, and and that was the beginning of me just sitting at home thinking, how can I do this? Because I really did enjoy cultivating. That was like it was so peaceful to me to be in my room by myself, working the plants, kind of knowing that if I do a good job, I'm going to benefit from it financially. And then also having to learn, right? Nothing was shared, nothing was given. Everything was a secret and everything had a value back then. So when it came to cannabis, no one was teaching you how to grow OG Kush. Why would they do that? Why would they ruin the value of what they know by watering it down and teaching someone how to do that?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of learning curve and there was a lot of time and effort that I had to put into it. But around that time where I was all in, I was like, man, I'm really getting 7,000. At that point, price point had gone down a little bit, but it was still above $6,000 a pound.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is the type of thing you want to be part of. How do I capture this? How do I figure this out? And that became the mission. How do I figure this out?
But when you were living up north in Lake County, somebody had to teach you, right? Somebody had to teach you how to cultivate.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Eddie, maybe it was somebody else.
No, to be honest, the people that I worked with back then, there was two people really, and they were my best friends. They had uncles,
Okay.
and those uncles were the guys. They were your what if I had to, they were outlaws. They were people that had been in the Northern California since the 60s. You know, they were the outlaws. They were see Eddie Lepp and that crew. They weren't really from Lake County. They kind of just landed there later on, right?
Yeah.
These guys were like true Lake County guys off the reservation. You know,
Yeah.
that was the real tough crew. Those were the guys that were the ones that were the teachers. Those were the guys that used us as we were the labor,
Yeah.
and we were able to learn by just being around them.
Got it. Clear. So when you made that decision that you're going to be in the cannabis business in some way, but the shift over from, flipping to I'm going to do this legitimately because I see this can be a real business. What was the action? What was the moment? What did you
You
do?
know, back then was all about figuring out how to do the paperwork.
Yeah.
How can we create our own 501(c)(3)? How do we do this legally? No one's sharing, right? No one knew because in reality, there was no written plan. There was no SOPs. There was no true understanding of how to do it. It was kind of like, do you have big balls? Like, are you willing to try? You know, are you willing to put it all out there and risk it all and see how far you go? So that was the challenge. That was the first thing that I was really passionate about trying to figure out because that was to me the key to the whole thing. If you understood what you legally could and could not do, you had an argument in court and therefore you could fight the good fight and run your business because people were operating, like I said. So around that time that I started pushing that agenda, I had just met what is my wife now.
Mhm.
And she was my legal secretary at the time. She was going to school. She had gone to school to be a paralegal, and she was on her way to going to law school. So I was like, "All right, baby, you're going to be with me. You're going to have to help me with this paperwork." And together, we figured it out. We filled out what we consider the first application that we ever did, and we applied in the city of Los Angeles for a retail license back in
But then
2007.
didn't wasn't part of the challenge also to find a place, like an actual location with a friendly landlord who wasn't going to
Oh,
gouge you and all that other stuff?
that was something that we could never. That was everything, right? That was back then it was figuring out how we could get the paperwork without it making it look exactly what we were going to do. We almost wanted to lie. It was like, how do you lie but don't lie?
No, but you, it was
You know,
crazy because I'll tell you, no, you're absolutely right because I remember our first shop, it was in Santa Ana and we did a deal with the landlord. And then the guy comes to us, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was. He goes, I want double the rent. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I see you guys are busy. You have a lot of people. You're making money. You don't like it, leave.
yep.
So they could just do that. What are you going to do?
There was nothing you could do, and that became the practice of these types of landlords, right? That was the strong arm approach. Let's see what you can make, and then you're going to owe me money. Otherwise, I'm going to get rid of you. But yeah, that was it, man. How do you do that? Green label. That's when we came up with the name Green Label. It was like, okay, it says green, so people are gonna know it's weed related, but it's just Green Label. So, let's see how far. And then we're like, okay, let's add the RX because we couldn't get the name Green Label to do business as because someone already had it, right? So we came up with the RX and we made the RX really small on the logo so you could barely see it. Um, Basically what you see right here on the wall behind me, you see where the R and then the X is in the cross right there.
I love
So
it, man, because it says, those who know. It says everything there. And then those who don't know are like, interesting, RX must be something to do with medical,
yeah.
pharmaceutical or something.
And the cool thing about it is if you know, you know. So that right there, that style of branding,
Mm.
that's a throwback to that time frame that we were only doing it there because that was the time we had to figure out how do we do this,
Right.
you know?
What was, as you said, there was a lot of different shops that were popping up everywhere, and it was sort of a free for all at the time. What did you feel made Green Label RX so unique?
Well, back then, I don't know if anything was unique. We didn't know. No one had like here's the thing, man. We were all trying to do this without being popular. Like
Exactly.
right? So the whole way of thinking, that was probably the hardest thing to transition from someone that was, I'm okay with hiding in the shadows, and then all of a sudden being out in the spotlight. So that was the navigation. How do I get through that? How do I get to a point where, I'm not a freedom fighter. I'm not trying to fight the good fight. I was at this point, I'm just trying to get the business going to make money. And I wasn't approaching it from that standpoint and willing to lose it all just for nothing. So that was tough. What made Green Label RX great at that time? I wouldn't say anything specific. We had the OG Kush. We had a strain that we started growing, and it was the PK, Pure Kush, or whatever they want to call it. It was popular. It was something that people wanted, and we were consistent. And back then, I was cultivating and I was just giving it to a select few dispensaries. They were my buyers, and it wasn't more than that. It was as simple as, if I grow the specific strain and do it well, these few people will buy it. There was no packaging. There was no. It was. I was a turkey bag boy.
Yeah.
Put it in a glass jar, and we weighed the eighth in front of you, and you walked out of it in a Ziploc bag or a jar with a label on it for medical purpose only.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, to me, it was a fun time because you can go into a shop, you can open up a jar, you can smell it, you can see it. But it also lent itself to a lot of, from a retail standpoint, people would take product would dry out. It wasn't really
It wasn't the most the worst way to run a business with cannabis, or a good like that. It's perishable. It was
Yeah,
just, and you don't want people handling it, but that was the way we had to do it. That was what made people excited to come to the weed store, right? Um, Before it was like, oh, what do you got? Oh, I got a quad. Okay, it's this. Here you go. Here's the bag. See you later. And then you open it up, you're not even sure what you're getting sometimes. Then it became the reality of being like, oh, look it. It's like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory. You had to do that. You had to let your customer look at it and touch it.
for sure. So, at what point did things transition and change to say, okay, this is a glorified, turkey bag business with jars, and I want to kind of stay in the shadows. I'm going to grow good weed and all this stuff. To I need to run a legitimate business, and also it's going to focus on wellness as well at some point, right?
That happened around 2014 for me.
Right.
We had gone for years trying to figure out how to get to that point. But that's when things started to change. You started to get a push by people trying to make it more mainstream. And that's when I knew I had to make the change, because there was no way. Prices in wholesale flower had dropped, pummeled to the lowest cost, $2,500 a pound. At that point, I thought the world was coming to an end.
Yeah.
And that's when we realized, it's mainstream now. We need to change the approach of how we do things. Can we pause for 1 second?
Sure.
I need to use the restroom real quick.
Yeah,
I
do
had
your thing,
lunch.
man.
Just give me 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
You got
My I am back. Thank you for
Oh,
that.
all
I
good.
never had that happen before, but I drank this 2 things of water this morning, drank another one. I wasn't holding over for another 20
Well, that's
minutes.
why we're recording and editing, so
It's all good.
no worries.
So around 2014, just back to where we left
Yeah,
off,
yeah.
I that's when I started witnessing what I call the rejuvenation of High Times magazine. Right? They were the ones that were pushing these events. We were having all these it was a party, right? It was like, come out and showcase who you are and be the cannabis brand that you want to be. And that's when I realized, man, I got to figure this out. And that's when, I started Green Label RX with the help of my wife in 2007.
Right.
So that was the beginning. That's when you were starting to see the movement and trying to. I remember being on there. There was this website called IC Mag, like International Cannabis Magazine, right? That was the magazine or the website that we'd all go on to look at what was going on around the world. How do you grow weed? How do you how do you grow? How do you find the genetics? You know, it was people from all over the world, and they were just basically on a chat uh, channel, and that's when I started to see people branding themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where I was like, man, just one day this is going to be like Coca-Cola. One day there's going to be a brand that sticks out and it's going to be mainstream. Who's going to be the Marble Greens? Remember, they'd be like Marble Greens. Marble's going to start a cannon. It's going to be the green bag. So that was the push. I had to do something to be recognized so that we could sell a product because it was becoming harder. It wasn't Turkey Bag Boys wasn't working anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you had I remember on that IC Mag page. That's when I discovered the Jungle Boys. That's when, and that was probably like 2000. She's later, way later, 2009 maybe. I think that's about what time. There was the guy Ivan who was the main guy for them. He had a page on there. His handle was like Jack Me Offer. It was fucking it was hilarious. But he was one of they were the first group, and their brand blew up because he was one of the first people. And I say this over and over again, like they had the balls to post pictures of him doing shit online.
Yeah.
And he, if it wasn't for the newness of like of social media, you know, that's what it was. Just whoever was the first to market really took advantage of those situations. And that's what we were doing. We were trying to push for that. That's why we came up with Green Label.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. You're absolutely right because when we first started, I remember way back in the day, you have our Facebook account with corrupt on there and
Yeah.
brands. We have merch and all that stuff, and you know, specials. You come in, you take a picture of you wearing our merch somewhere with a celebrity. We'll give you, you know, a free pre-roll or things of that nature. And I think that's why we got rated the first time.
No, that's the next phase, right? That's exactly why we got rated.
Yeah.
That's exactly why what led us to you know, for me, that's what led to the problems that I had.
Yeah.
I was fine. I was a chameleon. I was capable of interacting in the traditional market at a high level and not being out there in the public eye. It wasn't until we tried to become a brand and get recognized for that brand that we ended up having a raid take place. You know what I mean? And that was some of the when you look back at the first wave of people trying to be cannabis entrepreneurs and really doing it on a corporate level, basically what you asked earlier, that's what happened. If you were going too big or you were out there too much, somebody was going to knock on your door.
Yeah, exactly. So what occurred with that and how did that affect your business trajectory?
Oh man, that was probably the hardest, most difficult thing I ever, and I've been through a lot in life. That was the hardest thing for us. You know, for me, it wasn't just a raid. It was devastating. It changed everything. We had our children taken from us. We had, you know, we were incarcerated. And this was from what we considered a legal business at the time because we had a license. At that point in time, we had received a license from the city of Rancho Mirage. And Rancho Mirage, we were the first ones that they issued a actual license to sell cannabis through a delivery service, which was the first one that was issued in the state. Specifically said that, hey, you can sell cannabis in our city through a delivery platform. Well, that didn't work out too good because the sheriff found out about it, right? And it led to us being raided at our homes because we were running a delivery business. A lot of that interaction and transactions took place in our vehicles. And where did my vehicles go? They went to my house. You know, we were a family business. It was me at that point in time. I had my brothers working with me. You know, their girlfriends, their wives. Everyone was involved. We were really trying to do something different, and it led to me getting raided in 2000 January 9th, 2016, which wasn't that long ago if you think about it. But at the time, I had a 3-year-old son, I had a 2-year-old daughter, and uh, I had a 3-year-old son, 3.5. Daughter was like two, 2 years, 3 months, and my oldest son, my youngest son, was just a year and 1 month. So me and my wife, we popped out 3 kids pretty fast,
Yeah.
and we found ourselves with 3 young babies at one time. And yeah, when they raided, they came in. That was the worst day of my life. You know what I mean? It was hands, and we've been through a lot. I've lost my father. We've gone through a lot of things. But your children, I don't know if you're a father and you have children, but if you are, you know exactly what I'm saying. That my job is to protect them, not to have them taken from me. And being someone that came from where I came from, that was probably the biggest like letdown in my life, because I didn't want that for my children. I didn't want my kids to have to be separated from us, or even to interact with the system in any way, shape, or form. So that's what led to me being popular, led to them taking my kids.
Yeah, and it's cannabis. You think about it right now, it's cannabis, and with the things that people had to go through. But there was a moment that, people face these crossroads in life where things happen to them, and some people sort of spiral downward, but you were able to leverage that to sort of pick yourself back up and reinvent yourself in a way. Is that right?
100%. That's very accurate. Having grit, determination. Some of the things that I went through just fueled my fire a little bit more. They stoked the fire. You know what I mean? I was so angry. I'll be honest. I was more angry, and I was so angry. I was so mad at myself. I felt so bad that I felt like the only way to make this right was to show my kids through my success, and to not give up. That if I didn't do what I'm doing today, all that was for nothing.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to figure that out. I wasn't just when it happened. No, I was like, man, I'll give it all up. Just give me my kids back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just take everything I have. I just want my kids back. Um, but then after I went through the system, and if anyone if you've ever been in the system or gone through it, or people, you realize it's not. It's excuse my language, but it's fuck you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is war. You guys, there's zero respect, or we're not on the same page when it comes to that level of where we're supposed to be at, and how I see my kids. Those are mine. You're not supposed to take my kids. So that was it, man. We sacrificed a lot, and the only way I could correct it and make it better in my heart was to show my children that this was not for nothing. We're doing this for the right reasons. We're doing it for all the people that need medicine, that need it for wellness, need it for whatever reasons they choose to need it for. And I need to be allowed to do this because you're saying I can, and I'm following the rules. You're just choosing to pick and choose who you want to take down, who you want to try to enforce laws that don't really matter, because they've already changed those rules. But the sheriff or the whoever it was, they didn't want to abide by the new rules. And I was a casualty of that.
What is your wellness brand, Greater Purpose? Is that one of the reasons why you sort of, named it that way, or? Uh,
Well, we that's it. Looking back at how people have um, categorized cannabis, how it's been just looked down upon as like negative. Um, if you look how they over time, how they wanted to market it, the government, the campaigns from the 30s, and the dare, don't do drugs, and everything that's taken place after me using it over time, and seeing so many people, it really is medicine.
yeah.
And it's greater than just getting high. There's so much that we can learn from the plant, and part of it was the purpose of why I was doing it was to change my family's trajectory.
Yeah.
Um, and greater purpose. What a good name, huh?
It's a great name and it makes total sense. And also, I got to say, like, you were able to resurrect your brand, Green Label RX, make it a brand with purpose. And then through all the things that you have gone through, and by the way, we got rated, Be Real got rated the same day we got rated. So the people, you sort of survived to thrive. And a lot of people folded and went away.
Yeah.
But that they have the social equity program. We can have a whole conversation
That's
about
a whole nother, that's another hour.
yeah, exactly, about that and how different states utilize that and how different people utilize that. But now you build these relationships, and you I think Gary Payton
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
one of the brands that you're working with. So it went through from deep down as you can be. You said your lowest point to really blasting that rocket off to the next level. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of resilience and a lot of passion for that. So uh, is it what's next for Green Label RX?
Green Label RX. Green Label RX right now is we're at that point where we're about to really take off. Um, as you know, the economy is what the economy is in the US right now. But this is the time for us because we know if we keep pushing, if we keep doing what we believe is the right thing, we're going to get there. And that's expansion. That's allowing the world to know who we are. Um, Continue to make good products and the goal is to be mainstream as much as possible, to be something that people recognize. When you see that logo and you hear this story that I just told you, you can resonate with that. We want the people to understand that a lot of us fought um, for this opportunity to be here and provide you this product. And we're one of those ones that we've survived it. Like you said, we didn't roll it up. We kept pushing. And Green Label RX is that we are the American dream.
I love that, man, because it definitely, yeah, it's true, man. It's so true because you know the American dream is overcoming obstacles. It is being resilient, and it is, kind of utilizing the things that are outside your control, like being rated, like prices, like taxes, all these things, to allow to leverage them to make you stronger and to be able to pivot and find those sweet spots in the opportunities that come to you. And if you're
Yeah.
doing it with a greater purpose, and I keep coming back to that, then you're being pulled towards that anyway. It's not you're pushing through, you're being already pulled. So all that stuff just makes you more resilient and makes you stronger. I really commend you for doing that because not a lot of people, there's a lot of people coming into this industry now. I've been in boardrooms with these, larger companies, MSOs. People never even consume cannabis. I'm like,
No.
you're sitting here in the boardroom, and I understand it. It's a business. I get it completely. It's a huge business, multi-billion-dollar business. But you can't. You mentioned Coca-Cola. How are you selling Coca-Cola if you never tried it in the
Exactly.
first place? You gotta have a connection to plan, and I commend people, you and people like yourself who have gone through that journey and were able to turn things around and create a brand. Is your goal to expand outside of even California?
Yeah, right now we've already done that. So we've right now we're out in New Mexico. Um, we are still in the workings of Arizona. The goal is to just go state by state and take us wherever we can go. Right. New York is on the horizon. We have an East Coast play possibly. We're looking to just go as far as we can go with it. Knowing the way things are today, we don't see this being a market where it's everything's figured out yet, right? We still have federal legalization. We still have the opportunity to go to Europe. There's so much growth that is still out there. Now, has it changed? Yes, things change. That's the ebb and flow of cannabis.
Right.
We're gonna have highs, we're gonna have lows. The guarantee from us is that we're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And we want to get to the East Coast. We want to become a brand that's recognized across the United States. We want to be in all of North America, whether that's Canada. Um, we want to even get into Mexico, and we want to. That's the goal. My goal is to create legacy. My goal is to create an ability to have my story and my family's story to live as long as people can hear it.
Love that. All right. You got to tell me one of the Backwood stories up from North, whatever story resonates with you that comes to mind first.
I mean, listen, back there was crazy, but here's something that when I first got into this, we were out in there's a town called Upper Lake, and it's there's these valleys. If up there, we had a bunch of different valleys. So when you got on the road, you just kind of kept driving, and you just got into the valley. But when we'd work out there, one of the things that people would do is in the morning when they'd get up, they'd let their guns off. And that was a big thing. And I never, I always thought that was the coolest thing as a youngster. It was like letting the guy know on the other valley, on the other hill, we're up. Ba, 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 ba. And it was a combination of like, hey, bro, you ain't coming up here. If you don't want none of this, don't come up here.
Yeah.
And it was a tradition that kind of led to like a daily thing of letting a few rounds off and being young and being
Sure.
part of it. But just, up there is the way we did transactions, right? You got old man Sam bringing it down from the mountaintop. We'll meet you at the parking lot behind Safeway, and we're doing deals 200 or 300 pounds in the parking lot because that was Northern California.
Yeah.
And those are the things, man. Those were times where we were figuring it out, but it was some backwoods shit that, people come from the city, they be scared out of their mind, and I'd be like, you know what? You have a good reason to be scared. Uh, one of those things when you're from Lake County, if you're not from there, don't go there. Don't go up there unless you know who you're talking to and dealing with, because when you're up there and it gets dark, it's really dark.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I'm lucky. I always felt lucky because I was able to go to those places, even though I'm, just like some white kid or whatever you want
Yeah,
to call me, some sort of off-white, whitish kind of guy who
yeah,
from the city. But because I was so medical and focused on the medicinal aspects of the plant, I could talk to the old heads and sit down, and we were like, I understand how the endocannabinoid system works. And so that respect level was there, and
and
that made all the difference in the world.
that's what it was all about, man. If you had to respect those around you, and you get the respect back.
Yeah,
It wasn't that we didn't want you there. We needed you there. We needed people to be there in order to sell our product. So
sure.
it was just, were you willing to jump through those hoops and do things the right way?
Exactly.
And that's awesome that you experienced that, because that's something I think people are no longer ever going to get to experience.
Yeah.
And like anything, there's always change, but that was the thing about being up north. I had this guy. I mean, the number one guy I used to deal with. His name was White Deer. All the different names people had,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
But
So I have a few questions I ask on my guests, and a couple that maybe even cannabis related. So I'm going to talk about music first. Do
yeah,
you remember, and if so, the very first concert that you attended?
wow. Very first concert I ever attended, man. The biggest one that I ever went to for the first time, that, believe it or not, being poor and all that, was Eminem. It was Eminem. It was like 1998, maybe 98. That's how I didn't even get to go to concerts. Other than we would go to like, to be honest, I went out to, that was a concert. Now I went to like reggae events and
Yeah.
festivals on the river and this and that, but it was just no famous people.
Yeah.
But definitely Eminem was the very first one that I ever went to that was a famous rapper at the time.
What was the last concert you attended?
Oh man, I just went to what did I do recently? I went to a reggae festival, and we were able to watch Bob Marley's sons perform over here at the Hollywood Bowl. That was the last thing that I went to.
I think I was there.
Yeah,
As a matter
that's
of
my
fact,
thing. I do that every year now.
yeah, the reggae fest, Stephen
Yeah,
Marley
yeah, Marley and Brothers or
and
whatever it was
Ziggy,
called.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I saw that too. Um, okay, so for the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to know the name of the album. You can say Eminem or whatever it is. What will be
No,
those 5 albums?
5 albums right now. Listen, if I'm listening to 5 albums, and it has to be a combination. I'm from the '90s, so we listen to a lot of different music. I would say I would definitely for my kids. I would be listening to. They're into my oldest son is into Future, the rapper Future. So his new album. Maybe not his album, but his music. I've listened to that. I like the old school. I want to listen to some ACDC. Uh, who else? Let me see here. What I'm bumping right now. Believe it or not, we listen to a lot of Kanye West still, even though he's gone a little different down the road. But my kids love it. I am a believer, so I listen to a lot of Christian music as well nowadays, more than I used to. So definitely, I would have some of that on there, which is crazy because it tells you how wild I am. The music that I listen to, right? And then something that I really enjoy um, is I like old Motown stuff. So I'm a music head, but I like all genres.
Yeah, likewise.
I just that's I like it all. I don't have one particular thing I'm going to listen to all day.
What has cannabis meant in your life?
It's meant um, a lot of love and a lot of heartache. Um, but that's it. It's life. It's been my life's journey now that I look back on it. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. It's 1996. It's been a lot of love and a lot of hardship at the same time.
Yeah, I feel you. All right, so final bonus question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Oh man, didn't have much. We would. I always had to share the bed with my brother. Um, the things that I had in there, simple things. We always had some toy soldiers, some GI Joes, um, and I would have sports cards. I always liked to collect the sports cards of players and stuff like that. That was the thing. So my room, for the most part, always a mess because my little brother was a pig. Uh, I love you, Bubba. But didn't have much. So we
Any posters in the room or any
yes,
pictures or
the
art?
poster I had was a Bo Jackson the black and blue when he had the that was when he played baseball and football at the same time.
Yeah,
And I had a Michael Jordan poster.
super cool.
That was it. Big Dodger fan though, always.
Yeah. Um, Jason, where can people find out more about you, where they can contact you, where can they find out or go to Green Label RX?
Yeah. Well, you can find us on greenlabelrx.com. You're going to get a little bit of everything about the brand there. You can find me personally on my social media. I am Green Label. Um, that's Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. And look for us at your local cannabis retail store. We not only do we have retail stores, we also have our brand that we're in multiple stores throughout the state of California. So and know that you can always reach out to us. We're available. So if anyone needs anything, go on our social media. Green Label RX is on Instagram. You can find us there. You can communicate with us and kind of go from there.
Love it. And for my audience, thank you again for, staying through the whole show. If you did, you must have found it entertaining as I did. So I appreciate all the reviews. Thank you so much for the 5 stars. the 4 stars even, because I'm always looking to improve. Luckily,
Right.
that's the lowest the star rating that I gotten. So
Yeah.
appreciate
Well,
y'all. Appreciate you buy my book. You can get Making Cannabis Personal on Amazon, and listening to this. And Jason, really great story, man. It's so inspirational. I think people don't understand the cannabis quote unquote business as you just described it. So I'm glad, I got to reminisce and follow you and walk in your footsteps for a minute. I hope my audience really appreciates the hardship, the struggle, and the passion. I think it takes all those different things to be able to succeed in this industry. And I commend you for sticking with it and making a success. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. This was an amazing opportunity to be on a podcast. And it's this is what it's about. We want to be storytellers. I think that's where my value is. So I want to let people know what we went through and where we're at today. So we thank you once again. This is amazing. You've been a pleasure to talk to. Um, that was probably one of the better conversations I've had in a while.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
All right, take care. We'll talk soon.
Got it. Hey, everyone. Thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.